As a protest convoy arrives in Ottawa, many have raised concerns about people with extreme views that have attached themselves to that protest and have very little to do with truckers. Let's go beyond the headlines and take a look at what's fueling the movement and whether the message has gone off track. Joining me now is Mike Millian. He's the president of the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada, and Evan Balgord is the executive director of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Thanks to both of you for being with us. And I'll start with you, Mike. Let me get your take on this convoy from what it started as to where it is now.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me tonight. And I'll just start off by saying, that the PMTC is in favor of people's rights to peacefully protest. It's what makes Canada a great country. In saying that, we have to make sure it's done right, which is, polite, peaceful, respectful of others, and making sure we don't endanger people's health and safety. The convoy itself, even before it hit the road on January 23rd, early on in January in social media, it was purported to be a border vaccine mandate convoy to do with the border vaccine mandate that was coming into effect on January 15th for drivers coming into Canada, as well as a federal vaccine mandate that the Liberal government told us in December would be coming into effect in early 2022.
Are you concerned about the groups that have attached themselves to this and some might say have co-opted this?
For sure. We spoke out a couple days ago. There's, unfortunately, with protests now, there seems to be these groups, and we've seen it a lot more in the last 4 or 5 years, and especially in the last 2 years since COVID. We see these almost professional protester groups that will attach onto a movement and then kind of put their own message and put their own spin on things. So we are concerned with some of the rhetoric that we've heard, but I would like to say that, we believe the majority of that rhetoric is not coming from the trucking industry. Or the truckers that are involved in this convoy. We did encourage, we spoke out against the rhetoric that we've heard, denouncing violence, racist comments, comparing it to Nazi movements. There's no place for that in our mind, and you have to speak down against that. The convoy, some of their organizers did come out yesterday and also spoke out against it, which we were glad to see, and have told their members to report it to the police if it's there. We need to detach the industry and detach the truckers in this convoy from any racist or hate speech that goes on.
I want to
place for that.
I want to bring Evan into this conversation. Can you talk to us a little bit about what you know about some of these specific groups who have been involved in this protest?
Yeah, and I really feel for real truckers and for Mike here. God bless them. They've been delivering us food and essential goods since the beginning of the pandemic. Something like 85-90% of them are vaccinated, and we all really appreciate their service. Unfortunately, the issue Mike raised about the cross-border mandate has entirely been lost now because the far right grabbed onto the idea, stole it, and have now associated it with extremism and are kind of associating truckers in this convoy with extremism, which is not fair at all to truckers, right? Not fair at all to real truckers. From day one, the people who have organized this thing have been what we follow in the far right. The organizers of the GoFundMe are on record making very Islamophobic comments in the past. One of its loudest mouths there, a man named Pat King, has been associated with, the Yellow Vest movement, with the previous United We Roll convoy. There was actually another far right convoy in 2019 that was extremely similar. They're even using the same posters and propaganda. And, he's made so many incitements to violence and racist comments in the past. It's a lot. And it's not just them. The Ontario organizer of this convoy used to be associated with, or may still be associated with, the Soldiers of Odin, which is a group founded by a Finnish neo-Nazi to hate Muslims. And there's other groups that we're very concerned about, accelerationists who want to violently overthrow the system, who are now also encouraging their members to join. In fact, one of the key figures of that, Jeremy McKenzie, his slogan is "gun or rope," the death threat to his critics. So we have not just a couple bad apples involved here, but the organizers themselves and some of the loudest spokespeople for this rally are bad apples. And all of the bad apples that we monitor in Canada, because they are members of hate groups and so on and so forth, have come to support this rally So that's the big issue here, right? I think Mike has a genuine point about talking with the government about, these vaccine mandates. I don't have a position on it one way or the other, but it seems like a reasonable thing that adults can have a conversation about. And I feel really badly for him and for other truckers that these extremists have stolen that issue and have now made it so toxic that there's no way that Ottawa is going to bow to their demands.
So, Mike, hearing who exactly we're dealing with in some of these groups, is it enough to say, we denounce this rhetoric, we don't agree with these far-right extremists and racists, or is it time for that protest, if they really do want to have that conversation, to physically separate themselves and say, we're going to go somewhere else because we just don't want to be in the same space or even in the same sentence as these folks?
Yeah, well, and again, just let me reiterate that I don't believe the truckers in this convoy are the ones who are speaking this type of language. They're there for legitimate concerns and their own reasons. As far as physically separating from a group that's trying to take over your message, I think at this point it's going to be difficult. We've already got a couple hundred trucks in Ottawa, and the main part of the convoy isn't there yet. So if they're going to do it, we got convoys coming from multiple different areas of the country that are converging on Ottawa. They'd have to do it on the fly, and then try to make sure some of these groups that may be attaching to them, aren't following. At this point, it's probably going to be difficult.
Right.
I think they just have to make sure that the people involved in this convoy from the trucking side make sure that they continue to denounce and let people know that the trucking industry is not involved in these extremist views.
Evan, really quickly before we go, should officials be proactively, acting on some of the folks who are calling for violence, for calling for Canada to have its own January 6th? Is it too late to wait for that to escalate to that point? Should police be acting on that?
In my opinion, police already should have been acting on some of these individuals a while ago, specifically the ones who've been calling for violence. Pat King, who I mentioned before, who's become one of the most vocal proponents of this, has previously said that, the only solution to, public health measures and vaccines is bullets, right? So we have individuals here who are espousing violence, and then all of a sudden, one day ago himself, individuals like Jeremy McKenzie are all of a sudden saying, if there is violence, it's not us, it's some kind of false flag attack. After, months and years of telling their supporters that there's going to be a civil war where this problem is only solved with bullets, or they need to find their enemies, right? So there is kind of violent rhetoric surrounding this, and law enforcement needs to take a close look at it.
All right, we will watch and wait to see what happens tomorrow. Mike Millian, president of the Private Motor Truck Council of Canada, and Evan Balgord, the executive director of the Canadian Anti-Hate Network. Thanks to both of you for your time tonight.
Thank you.